You know, this is the season, one with so many demands and so little time, it's easy for the most wonderful time of the year to become the most wearisome. And if that sounds like your holidays, take heart, because Sheila says that in the middle of the mayhem lies the greatest gift of all.
Sheila Walsh is well known in Christian media as a TV host, Bible teacher, and prolific author. CBN audiences have loved her since her days as a co-host.
Will you get off that?
In her new project for the Christmas season, Sheila helps us revive a sense of wonder and expectancy. The Gifts of Christmas offers 25 Advent devotions which guide holiday-weary readers back to the greatest gift of all.
Please welcome back to the 700 Club. It's home, we think, for her, Sheila Walsh. It's wonderful to have you back here.
Terry, I just love you so much. I'm serious.
Well, ditto, friend. And I am an Advent person, so when I saw your new book, The Gifts of Christmas, I was so excited, because finding Advent reading that really leads you where you want it to lead you, to Jesus, is so wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about some of what you've written in here. I mean, you're such a great writer, but
thank you.
You talk about, you know, this is a time of year where we think of memories of things that happened, and you write about having a particular doll that you wanted one year for Christmas. And talk about that, because I think there's such a great message for all of us in it.
We had one toy store in our little town on the west coast of Scotland, and my nose would be glued to the window because there was this baby doll that I wanted so much. And I'd dropped hints to my mom, I'd written letters to Santa, I'd done everything. I told the pastor in case he had any influence. But when it came Christmas morning and we came downstairs, my sister's gifts were always on a chair by the fire, the left side, mine were on the right, and my brother's on the table. And I didn't even look at first, because I thought if it's not there, life is over as I know it. I'm 7 and this could be a deal breaker. And when I finally looked at the gifts on my chair, it wasn't there. And I tried not to cry, and my mom was like, well, Sheila, open your presents. So I opened a few, and she said, oh, you're not going to look at your main present. And I'm like, what main present? She said, Sheila, look, it's under the chair. And there, under the chair, was the baby doll I wanted. And I thought, it's such a... Every year I think about it, Terry, because the gift was right at my feet.
Yes.
And I think it's so easy for us in the midst of the season to forget that the greatest gift of all, ground zero of hope, was laid at our feet. And I don't want people to miss that in the midst of the craziness.
One of the gifts you have in your writing, I think, is taking stories and things that have happened and finding that deeper moment in there for us. Because you write about, I think this is so important, the difference between expectation and expectancy. And, you know, maybe never more than the Christmas season, even as you're talking about as a child, do we have this expectation. But talk about the difference between the two.
I think this season is hard for a lot of people. For a lot of people, this Christmas will remind them that there's an empty seat at the table. And people are struggling with loneliness, anxiety, at record epidemic levels. But there's a difference between, you know, I can expect that my turkey this year will come out perfectly, and, you know, I'm not laying any money on it. But living with expectancy is that this tiny baby who was laid at our feet will one day return, and will return as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And he will never disappoint. So even if you're by yourself this Christmas or with your friends, if you're in the best days or the worst days, Christ, that was the whole message. 700 years before Jesus was born, Isaiah said, unto us a child is born, a son is given. So for all of us, you know, he's here.
Those prophecies are one of the most wonderful aspects of Christmas, aren't they? Just the heralding of Christ, as you're saying, thousands of years before he ever came. How does one not be moved by that? But then you talk about the circumstances that Jesus came to us in, and you had a quote from David Jeremiah. He was in a forgotten corner of a forgotten town in a forgotten country. Also, unglamorous. But why is that so important?
You know, and the thing I love is that the announcement was made to the boys on the night shift.
Yeah.
The fact that Jesus, the announcement of his
Yes.
birth came to the shepherds.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realise until doing some research, shepherds were the most despised people in the
Really?
community. Oh, yeah. If shepherds even went through the town, merchants would throw fruit at them and vegetables. They were looked at as the lowest of the low.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, if you go back to Genesis, when Joseph's brothers came to him and they realised, you know, we trafficked you to Egypt,
Yeah.
and now you're the one in charge. You're going to get revenge. And he said, no, no, I know you intended it for evil. God intended it for good. And then he said, now listen, if you want to live here, but you want to be far away from Egypt, tell them you're shepherds. Because if they know you're shepherds, they will put you in the furthest part of the kingdom and you'll have peace. The fact that God chose the shepherds, it means that Christ hasn't come for those of us who think we've got it all together.
Yes.
Christ came for those who are watching this in prison right now. He came for those who are devastated, destitute. And that was the message. God has come to us.
There's such, well, it's so wonderful. It is the most wonderful time of the year, but there's also so much chaos and kind of craziness that goes with it. And most of that we put upon ourselves. You know, you can embrace or leave behind whatever you choose. But how can we practically make this the most wonderful time of the year spiritually for us?
Yeah, that's why I wrote this. I've never written a Christmas book before, but I wanted to make it 25 days leading right up to Christmas, where we would just take some time and pause and do some research, finding out things like mistletoe. I avoided mistletoe like the plague when I was a kid. I was not an attractive teenager. I had bad skin, I had greasy hair, and so I would give it a wide berth. But mistletoe is known as the thief of the forest. It can't survive by itself, so it attaches to a tree and draws nourishment. But then through photosynthesis, it produces its own fruit. And to me, that's such a lesson. I cannot survive in this world without Jesus. So I am grafted into him. But then because of that, we produce fruit that impacts those around us. There's so many things, if we have eyes to see, that God is speaking to us through.
I love the way that you've done the book, where you've used all symbols of things that represent Christmas or the holiday to us. And then you take us down that road of this is what the real meaning of this is. Do you have a favorite of the things that you researched and looked and wrote about?
One of the things was this young Austrian priest wrote the lyrics to Silent Night, thinking it maybe would go no further than his own village. Then a friend of his put music to it. Fast forward to where God is about to use that. It's World War I. It's devastating. The German soldiers and British soldiers are in their trenches. World War I was brutal. There was gas. So it's Christmas Eve. And even the Pope had suggested, could there be a ceasefire? But neither side responded. But this one gentleman in the German army used to sing with the Berlin Opera, got up and began to sing in German, Silent Night. And eventually all the German soldiers joined in. The British soldiers, who are just a few hundred yards away, hear it, and they think, we know this, and they start to sing.
Wow.
And for that moment, everyone put their weapons down and began to sing a better song. Surely because of Jesus, it's time for us all to put our weapons down and sing a better song.
Yeah. Oof. Boy, that's a word for the hour and the day that we live in. You talked a moment ago about not being able to do this journey of life by yourself. Certainly, if we haven't discovered that, we will, because life will eat you up. You had a moment when you were going through some of the most difficult times of your life, and Ruth Graham impacted you. Tell us about that.
And it was interesting. It was while I was here at the 700 Club, I just had a complete breakdown. I ended up in a psychiatric hospital for a month, which was one of God's greatest gifts to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes God will take you to a prison to set you free.
True.
And when I got out, I felt very vulnerable. And Pat was so sweet to me. He treated me like I was his daughter. But I felt very vulnerable, very alone. But Ruth invited me to come to the house. And on that first night, she said to me, can I read you a story? I'm like, yes, you can read me
Ruth.
No, Billy Graham's wife, you may not. But she came and sat on the edge of my bed, brought me a cup of tea, and read me the story of a Scottish man who had kind of dismissed his child because she wasn't doing all the right things, but the grace of God that brought her back. And I remember her telling me, God's not finished writing your story, Sheila. And I think for the number of people who watch this program regularly and are blessed by what you guys do, some of them are in the worst places of their life.
Yes.
And I just want to say to them, God has not finished writing your story, and he holds all the pieces.
Yeah. How do we carry the Christmas spirit through the rest of the year, Sheila?
Oh, that's a great question. And honestly, every single day now, I mean, Christ is my best friend. I adore my husband. We've been married 29 years, got a beautiful son who's about to turn 27. But Jesus is the best friend I've ever had in my life. And every day I wake up and I ask this, Lord, give me eyes to see what I'd miss today without you. Give me ears to hear. And God is on the move, and we are God's boots on the ground.
Amen. Your writing is always so rich with thought and truth and nudges for all of us. I want you to be sure to get Sheila's book. It's called The Gifts of Christmas. And here's the thing, whether you've started Advent or not, you can just jump right in. Any place in the book is going to take you to the feet of the cross and to the stable this Christmas season. It's available nationwide. The Gifts of Christmas. They belong to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you,
Wonderful
Terry.
to have you here.